Our voices cry, our anger mounts. People will care, that's what really counts. Instead of criticizing, why don't you help? We need support to free us from this hell, Mark.
From this domestic prison mass graves and compliant. From Disrupt, the mighty Disrupt, from the Unrest record, this is Record Metal Podcast. I'm Mark Rudolph.
And I am Jason Hundy. And tonight we're entering another of our favorite records into our Requiem Hall of Fame, if you will. Unfortunately, probably a record that never will make it to the Hall of Fame based on the rules, because some of the members are kind of MIA.
Yeah.
A little MIA, but...
Or playing high school basketball.
Yeah, playing high school basketball, or starring on Who's the Boss. Yeah, and Charmed. But we'll get to that later. We don't want to let too many cats out of the bag. For those of you that are maybe unfamiliar with Disrupt, we just heard a trio of tunes, as Mark said. the first 3 tunes, all of which add up to about 5 minutes and 30 seconds, because we're dealing with kind of the punk grind,
Anarcho
D-beat, yeah, the ultimate D-beat band, I guess, as we are kind of searching through on information on these guys, which is kind of tough to come by. There's not a lot written about them. We kind of went back and skirmished through our pile of decibels to find the review for when Unrest was reissued a few years back. And
it's always been, the record ever since it came out has been pretty highly touted.
Yeah.
At least in like grind circles for sure. And I don't know how much crossover it's had with, punk crowds or...
Well, it's unfortunate because, like, when we tried to find information on some of, like, the more, I guess, I don't know, the metal sites that we turn to kind of get some of our band members.
Oh yeah, like
kind of straight
Metallium.
The Metallium stuff, it won't even show up there. So there's like this kind of dividing line for some people where they probably won't even acknowledge Disrupt because they're just too much in the punk kind of grind. Stuff.
All intents, they're a punk band.
Yeah,
when it really comes down to it. And the whole issue or the whole difference between punk and metal has always just been uniform and lyrics.
Yeah.
And with
to me, the intensity of this is can beat the crap out of the intensity of 90% of the metal bands that are out there.
Oh,
in terms of aggression and passion and all those sort of things. And so,
these guys are coming right from like Napalm Death and Discharge and like Chaos UK and Extreme Noise Terror.
Super catchy,
Conflict,
super
all that kind
groovy,
of stuff,
kind of stuff, but like very passionate and very adamant about the politics and the message and the stripped down sound of what they're trying to do. And it's just
if punk was like this, all punk was like this, I would have jumped right on board.
Yeah, we would have all been punk fans, but. And it's weird. I wonder, I know on the punk show we did, or that you did with Kevin, a few months back, it was, Kevin was kind of saying that, he was kind of a metal guy that was just looking for more messages in his music, and so that's why he drifted into punk and stuff. And, like, I could kind of respect from where he was coming from, because, I guess I do need... there's some music I listen to for messages, but metal has never really been that for me. It's been more like an outlet of musicality or
just something that like kind of strikes you at the core that not necessarily explain what it is, but somehow you need it.
Yeah, or like exactly. It's like a primal, like a raw emotional response or something like that. And so
it's like when I finally kind of like understood what jazz was all about.
Sure.
And you just there was no lyrics to get. It's that musical kind of hook that kind of grabs you.
Yeah, that's a good relationship, because both you and I have had to kind of go on our own journey in order to kind of discover jazz, and unlock some of those doors. And a lot of punk, unfortunately, when we were coming up in the 90s, that was one of the weirder times to try and connect to punk.
It was a dark time.
Yeah.
It was the commercialization of punk.
Yeah, it was the whole Epitaph scene and what Offspring and
Fat
Green
Records.
Day and Fat and, just there's a lot of garbage out there. And so, you and Chris, having probably been serviced by Relapse when this record was put out by Relapse back in, was it 92, I think, when this was officially put out?
Yeah, I think we got it either 92, 93, something like that.
What was did either of you guys, gel on this? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we both were actually pretty into it at the time. I think we got it in cassette tape.
Okay. I remember the cassette being used at the record store.
Yeah.
Which probably was from you guys.
But we got it because this was around the same time as like Extreme Conditions from Brutal Truth came out, which was along the same lines, but more metal, more metallic.
Sure, yeah.
And that's what I was into metal for was the catchiness, the aggression, just the sonic quality of it. The lyrics it was cool if they made some kind of sense. I didn't really care if they were really bad. That's when I noticed like Massacre lyrics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but
or really cliche or something.
Yeah, and actually like Death lyrics I thought were awful. The band Death, I think, were kind of pathetic early on.
Especially those first few records. Until Spiritual Healing.
Repulsion
they started.
Lyrics, they're retarded, seriously.
Autopsy, all that stuff.
Yeah. But Autopsy I could get past because they're, I don't know, it was more body...
body dismemberment lyrics. And
along like how Carcass was, like as a young kid, you hear all this... more like body process decay stuff. It was,
That's true.
For some reason it worked more.
That's true.
And for when I was, I didn't think they were from the U.S. either, so I didn't have that
street cred. Yeah.
Oh, they're probably Swedish because they sound just like Dismember and Tomb. So
yeah. Little did you know. Little did you know you'd come backwards to Repulsion and Autopsy in your your golden years. But yeah, I mean, this is a band I didn't discover until they remastered this a few years back. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I remember you getting the Decibel issue, and I think you were talking about it. You're like, "Oh, did you pick up that remastered Disrupt yet?" And I was like, "No, I just kind of put them in with Dischange and all the other dis bands that sort of have transversed."
Yeah,
you know,
seeing what was it? Seeing, Feeling, Bleeding. It was basically a takeoff of the Discharge.
Discharge, yeah. Hear Nothing.
Hear Nothing, Say Nothing, something. Yeah, whatever. You know, close to it. But yeah,
there
was
purist Discharge fans that are going to.
Well, right after that ENT record came out, the Retribution. There was a bunch of other
D-beat kind of bands.
There was a lot of I think death metal guys that decided well, this stuff's kind of coming back. You know, we like the stuff too. Why
Let's
not
do it? Yeah.
Do it. And yeah, we got a glut of junk.
And so I always kind of maybe just in my own process threw them into that. And the other thing is when I first started hanging out with you guys, you and Chris. Chris was more my musical outlet, and Chris at that point had kind of been pretty turned off by grindcore. Like he had kind of gone through his phase of grindcore, and he was like having no part of it. You know, like it took guys like us years to discover the value of like a Nasum and stuff because of just the negative like pulse that Chris, when he was working for Relapse and stuff, would send out about that. And it's nothing.
Well, and
Chris,
when I was at Relapse as well, it was like grindcore central.
Yeah,
like nothing because I was like, oh cool, new Dismember record, let's hear that.
And all they wanted
they were warmed up to Dissection because Storm had just come out at that point. So everybody was like stoked about that, but it was like grindcore. And
I think I emerged into that glut of grindcore where grind was grind between like 94 and like 98 was just kind of like, what was it?
There's a couple. I mean, you had Nasum that came out, and you had.
But I was gonna say they got lost in the shuffle.
Like super young kids.
Benum. I don't know.
No, it wasn't Benum. It was. Kuhn was really into him. It's like Architect something, or I don't know, another Relapse band.
Discordance Axis? No.
That doesn't matter.
Well, I know,
but there's like a handful, I would say, in that era.
The thing that pulled
valid.
me back into the validity of grind is a band that I don't even consider grind anymore, but maybe you could argue that their EP was, and that was when Dillinger put out that 3-song EP on Relapse, and Chris was like, I don't really like this, and he kind of threw it toward me, and I listened to the crap
Under the Running Board, or
yeah,
okay,
and like that was kind of that's like math grind technical.
It's basically it's grind, but minus the real political. I mean, it's more like nonsensical hipster stuff. But
like it was an access point, and then that's when Kuhn and I famously sat at our second Metal Fest at the Grindcore bar, ate pickles with
Mika from Impale
Nazarene, and watched Dillinger, Nasum, and Brutal Truth, and just we're all about it, and that totally flipped the switch for me. But so
the whole thing with I think. The Dillinger thing, since if metalcore hadn't existed, they would have just been a grindcore band. Yeah, that was like the differentiation.
Probably, you're probably absolutely right.
I'm kind of sour to metalcore.
And I think a lot of the early great metalcore bands drew their roots from some of what the greatness of grindcore was. Like Botch and some of those bands were drawing from that sort of stuff. Yeah, and Swedish death metal. But they were kind of taking the best of all worlds. But back to Disrupt, Unrest. Several people in the band. I mean, we could run down kind of a lineup, but the two vocalists, you had Jay Styles and Pete Camarinos kind of do a lot of the trade-offs, which you just heard there. And there will be a third vocalist, which will come in, and you'll hear them in the next set, and we'll kind of keep that a nice surprise for those of you that aren't familiar with this.
I think vocally it was a lot of, they're pretty inspired by Extreme Noise Terror with the Phil Vane and, oh God, I can't think of the other guy's name right now. The two vocalists in that one had the more screamy and one had the guttural vocals.
Yeah.
I think the Chaos UK was similar to that as well.
Okay. Well, and even Carcass early stuff, to some extent, the way that Jeff and Bill kind of traded off. Yeah. I mean, granted, it's not D-beat, grind.
No, but I can see where that could have been part of the influence.
Absolutely.
It's just more over the top.
Sure. And then you had Jeff Hayward and Terry Savastano on guitars, and Randy Oderno on drums, and then Bob Palumbo on bass. And Terry and Randy...
Not a normal name in the bunch, is there?
No. And, I mean, I think these guys are all Boss Mass guys. I think they're bossing. So, big fans of the Red Sox like myself, even though I'm not from Boston. But Terry and Randy actually will, when Disrupt kind of closes the doors, which is pretty close after this record's released. This is pretty
they
much
toured
it.
for a couple months and
then they're done. But those guys will go on and form a really great doom band called Grief. So those of you familiar with that band, kind of odd, kind of like the Lee Dorian decision to go from utterly fast to utterly slow.
Yeah.
Kind of in a one fell swoop. But, some of the things that you heard them kind of talking about, Domestic Prison, which opened the whole show up, was kind of dealing with, abuse and, kind of...
abusive relationships.
Yeah, abusive relationships, feminism, sexism type issues and things like that. Mass Graves was kind of an anti-Holocaust, anti-Holocaust.
Of course.
Anti-neo-Nazi, that sort of fascism type stuff. And then Compliant, which I just read some lyrics from to start the show off, is just this kind of call to arms, for all the crusties, all the vegan kind of politicized anarcho punks to get out and kind of do their thing.
The vocal content's pretty typical of this.
Yeah.
They're not really. I mean, they scream a little louder and a little cooler and a little catchier than most people, but it's basically the same type of stuff.
And a good way to describe Disrupt, and I'm kind of not quoting verbatim from I think Stanko wrote the review for this in Decibel, was he kind of said they wrote all the crust songs that you sort of originally assumed were already written, or all the riffs that you thought had already been written, but they weren't.
Yeah.
It was them that wrote them. Disrupt sort of like, they almost capture that magic of, there's not really anything that sets them apart from some of the crust bands, but it's like every element of what Disrupt does is like works. It's absolutely like perfect.
It's done better than anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, they're more Discharge than Discharge.
Yeah.
When you think of Discharge, then you hear Discharge. It's not the same
It's Disrupt.
thing. Yeah.
I mean, it's what you think.
It's what you wanted Discharge to sound like.
Exactly. Again, they're writing the songs you thought were already written, but they're good stuff. So, but anyways, any thoughts before we go into the next?
Coming up this is one of my favorite songs, "A Life Is a Life," with some great vocal performances.
Disrupt also used a lot of really cool samples, and kind of like in the way that Carcass did on Necroticism and stuff. They used kind of cool medical samples and different like little clips. There'll even be a few film samples that you'll hear in the not this set of music.
Which Marduk has also done the same. So there's our little Kevin Bacon.
There you go. And then we got Pay For, kind of all dealing with corporate greed. Unrest, the title track, dealing with kind of the abuses of racism. It's one of the heavier tunes on the record. Then we got Reality Distortion, dealing with animal rights, factory farms type stuff. Kind of, I was talking to Mark. I showed a film called Food Inc., which is a cool documentary if you get a chance to see it, dealing with factory farms and stuff. And another sample. It's a pretty epic tune with some of the better breakdowns on the record. And then we get one of the more Sabbath-y kind of Melvin sludge tunes called Down My Throat.
That's a total Sabbath riff.
Yeah, it's very cool. And then we're going to end things with Tortured in Eternity, which has a nice little sample. We'll talk about the sample when we come back. It deals with animal rights. So enjoy A Life's a Life, and I think you'll figure out what this song's all about.
What needs to be known is that vivisection is unscientific, immoral, illegitimate, and fiscally unsound.
Are you saying, doctor, that there is no advantage at all in using animals in any kind of medical research?
Not only is there no advantage, but it's dangerous, because the results or the data that comes out of animal experimentation does not apply to human disease.
Up to the producer whether or not they want to chain pigs to the floor of a cement bottom cage, whether they want to cram 5, 6 or more laying hens in a cage just barely larger than the size of a record album.
Most
They're never out in the sunlight. You can notice that the lights are off and absolutely no windows. You can also see that they're lying in their own excrement.
Yeah.
They have severe intestinal problems because all they receive is a liquid diet. So they have constant diarrhea.
A life's life, dude.
A life's a life, yeah.
Vivisection is a scientific fraud. Thank you, Miss Alyssa Marie.
Yeah, and we just heard also about, what's done to animals that causes wonderful things like diarrhea.
Yeah.
Made me hungry, that's for sure. And yes, but obviously the thing that needs to be talked about is what we heard at the very beginning, which is Alyssa Murray. Something of a revelation, I would say.
Yeah.
She's not on every song on this record, but the ones she's on kind of have this whole...
I think if she was on every song, it wouldn't be as poignant.
No, but you kind of wait for her to just rear.
It's like waiting for the Neurosis hook.
Yeah, exactly. You're caught in like a hypnotic trance of sort of D beat, and then all of a sudden Alyssa comes out and just beats the living hell out of you.
But I haven't heard, like, anytime I hear A Life's Life in particular, it's that whole chills up your spine because she's screaming her guts out. And I can see why she only did a couple shows with them and recorded the record because that's a lot of exertion. Screw up your throat pretty good.
And there's very few females that have ever, I
think Julie Christmas is the only one that comes to mind that can scream like hell and sing really well.
Yeah, there's Candace from Walls of Jericho. Obviously, there's the Arch Enemy thing is a whole different sort of thing. Karen Crisis, that's a kind of a different type of thing. But in terms of raw intensity, I've never heard that. Now, a lot of sort of anarcho-punk bands did use sort of guy-girl trade-off vocals. I know Crass had some of that type of stuff, but
it wasn't as searing. This sounds like somebody just stuck a knife in her back or something.
To me, she's the female equivalent of what, Jacob from Converge is in a way, the sort of gurgling razor blades type, just cutting right through the middle of the songs, not just another instrument, but just another level of emotion, really, that's sort of there. And, in a way, I think Mark and I have we've sort of developed what we could call Alyssa Murray fetish in a way.
It's just like my Joe Bench crush.
Yeah, I don't care what she looks like. No one knows where she's even at, but I'd like to marry the girl, or at least
I just want her to scream at me.
Yeah, just pay her to scream at us for a while.
I'll stand on her lawn and she can throw a shoe at me or something.
Some people are into like feather tickling, but I'll take Alyssa Murray just
scream religion's a fraud at me and I'll leave.
Oh my gosh. And, you can't find anything about her. What we came up with was we found pictures of Alyssa Milano and like some
high school
basketball player.
Yeah.
So there you go. So if Alyssa Murray, if you're out there, just let us know. Let us know.
Send us an email and scream at us.
Yeah, there you go. Scream at us on
Scream
MP3
Requiem Metal Podcast is great.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that'd be a sweet show opener. She's like, Requiem Metal Podcast! Just craziness pouring out. But, you heard a lot of different musical flows through there. But obviously, they're pretty serious when they come to their political stuff. And the original cover, we forgot to mention, was a really cool collage put together by Scott Lewis. And unfortunately, I think the new one is cool as well.
He was the first drummer. Well, he's drummer of Winter for a while, and the first drummer for Brutal Truth.
Brutal Truth, yeah. So it kind of again on more of the.
And I think he was on Exit 13 at some point too.
Was he?
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
People got around.
Oh man, Exit 13. When are we gonna do the Exit 13 show?
I can get Bill on.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd love to talk about it.
I'm sure he would too.
Maybe we can do the Namblin Axe show and.
I've never gotten into Exit 13.
They're not bad.
Really?
Yeah, it's just stoner grind.
Huh. They just again they defined in a way that era of relapse that I avoided. That sort of glut of grindcore in the 90s.
They went on to do I think when Rich Hoke was with them for a while, and then they had what was that girl from? It wasn't Amber Asylum. Something else similar to that. It was another one of the release bands where they did some weird kind of Americana thing, which. I don't know. I didn't really get into it all. I didn't really understand it. But
I think I may have to go back and explore some of my Exit 13 roots a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, check out Green is Good's a pretty solid record.
Is it?
Yeah.
Check it out.
They were the centerfold in the first Requiem magazine.
Oh, are they? Nice. Yeah, and I know Bill from, as part of Relapse, he's a silent partner, right? Essentially, or
I think so. Yeah, Bill Yerkowitz and Steve O.D. were basically the two people.
Steve O.D.
the two consistent members of the band.
Gotcha. So Scott Lewis was part of that, you thought?
He played with them at some point.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he ever recorded or not, but
yeah. But if you get a chance here, you haven't checked out Winter. Definitely very very hip. And,
Metal Mind put out a really nice reissue of that.
And then was he the drummer then on
Extreme Conditions and then the first EP?
Okay.
I can't even think of the name of it. It's got Bedsheet and something else.
Yeah, I can picture the EP right now from Brutal Truth, but and it's a neat collage, kind of in the vein of a lot of the crustcore stuff, and even the first Napalm Death, which was put together with Jeff Walker and stuff. But the new cover's cool. It's not cool, but some obviously photos from the Holocaust of some sort. But it sends a message home, that's for sure. But the next kind of set of stuff that we're going to get into. Is dealing with a lot of the same issues, but Alyssa's going to make an appearance on Religion is a Fraud, which Mark was already just talking about, and features a great Exorcist little clips.
Oh yeah. Plus, I think that's
family-friendly stuff.
It's one of the most catchy choruses. I mean, as simple as it is, you'll be thinking about that a couple days later.
And it's one of those things too, where we're listening to it, and I'm like, man, I swear Alyssa's on here, and you're kind of like, no, I don't think she's on here, and then I'm like, no, I think she's on, and then right at the end, she just comes in and just takes the song over. She's kind of like the Overdrive, Well,
you'd think, two guys screaming and barking would be pretty attention grabbing, but she cuts the sonic quality of her voice cuts through everything else.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, just one of those gems. It's weird, because everyone always asks them in interviews, even in the Decibel interview. Have you talked to Alyssa?
This is from 2006.
Yeah, we haven't heard from her in years. No one knows what happened to her. She's sort of and that adds this sort of mystical quality that she shows up, records these songs, plays 3 shows with them, and then gone, never to be heard from again. And then we Stand Corrected, kind of dealing with political correctness and stuff. And this one has more of a kind of a Napalm Death, straightforward, extreme noise terror kind of feel to it. And then we get into faction disaster, which is dealing with all the wonderful political groups, which
are all the same, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure we can all kind of relate to the factionalization of Washington politics right now. In fact, there was a study that came out that said this is the most divisive that the Republicans and Democrats have ever been in our nation's history.
Did you watch any of the healthcare thing that was on C-SPAN?
Just total deadlock.
Well, it's funny. They showed a clip on the Daily Show of John McCain talking with Obama, like barking out a point, and Obama's like, "That's a valid point," and then McCain's like, he didn't even know what to make of it.
Yeah. Wait, no, we're supposed to yell at each other.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, senseless yelling. And so it's
John's, the campaign's over.
Yeah, I did hear that.
That was a good line.
Oh, I'm reminded of it every day. Those guys should get their own sitcom. Be like the bizarre odd couple.
It's so ridiculous. I mean, nothing's getting done.
I know. But so we can relate to faction disaster because it is a little bit of a faction disaster. Then we get another Alyssa tune, Human Garbage, about environmentalism, kind of eco-politics stuff, and really, really great, groovy, kind of punk chaos going on at the end. And Alyssa just sort of adds kind of more to the melee, makes it even more chaotic and just beautiful destruction at the end. And then we get a song about rock star wannabes, some of our favorite people. We actually saw some rock star wannabes tonight.
Saint Rock, check them out on MySpace.
Yeah, they were rocking Romeo.
Yeah, they do great Eddie Money covers.
Oh man, I Think I'm in Love.
Oh boy,
it was sweet. And they started off with "We're an American Band." That was
and then I think they did some either Creed, Nickelback,
or Shine Down.
Whatever.
One of those.
Is.
We it just sounded like what those bands are supposed to.
The bands that
like.
used to be on Roadrunner that got licensed to a larger company and keep them afloat.
Yeah. So, but unfortunately, they were without Sincerity, just as Disrupt was talking about. And then we got Neglected, about abused children. Some really sweet breakdowns. The Same Old Shit, kind of an anti-drinking...
It was anti-douchebags that drink song.
Anti-douchebags that drink. We did figure that out. And that's probably the most intense song on the record. You'll stand out. It's pretty fast, blazing kind of stuff. And then we're going to end up with yet another song about animal testing.
Yeah, another great chorus.
Yeah, and I can't remember. Are they for animal testing or are they against animal testing?
I think they want to make sure that all their shampoo is tested on bunnies.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't quite gotten the point of what they're trying to make. And that's a song called For What? So enjoy Religion is a Fraud and a whole nice set from Disrupt.
A bunch of other ones that you should just go out and buy it and then you can read this.
Exactly.
Jesus, fuck you! Jesus, fuck you! Liam, fuck you! In the name of the kingdom of God. that the enemy has no power over.
And the son of iniquity be powerless to harm her.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell,
Lord,
Paris,
hear my
you
prayer.
faithless
My
swine.
cry come unto me,
The Lord be with you.
and also with you.
Let us pray.
Nationwide, researchers use anywhere from 60 to 100 million animals a year.
For what? Same old shit. Neglect it without sincerity. Human garbage. Faction disaster. We stand corrected. And religion
is a fraud. Everybody should know that.
We all know that. So hopefully you haven't gotten too much of your Alyssa Murray fix, because we've saved 2 out of 3 for the end here. We've only got 3 more songs left.
Well, on the Unrest, or what is it? This is just the Unrest. There's the Rest as well. They added on an extra
like 11
10 tracks.
Songs, yeah. And some good ones too. We debated whether or not we should stay purist and play just the 20 songs that originally formed Unrest, or expand. And
I think we've set a record or track record as far as like we did even with Left Hand Path. We didn't play the 2 bonus tracks, Carnal Leftovers and whatever the Abnormally Deceased. I think the other one.
Yep. So
I remember that.
And obviously, I think 20 songs from Disrupt gives you enough sense of whether or not this is something you should purchase for yourself. I mean, either you get it or you don't. Or
you get real crafty and you try to take out our Talksets and then cut it apart. But just buy the damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, they deserve your respect and deserve.
Actually, and if you don't like CDs, like all those are lame, man. Those are my dad's media. They got it on record too.
Oh,
hey, I got both versions.
And definitely records are the modern way of listening to music. We all know that.
Totally.
Musically. So
just ask any kid walking on Hot Topic.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But God, I lost my train. Something else about Disrupt. If you're sort of like, rabidly like listening to this, kind of going, wow, like I've never even knew these guys existed, which could happen. I mean, heck, 3 years ago I didn't really know much about these guys. They also had a double disc that came out called the Rest, which features
all their splits and stuff.
Yeah, it's probably about 70 to 80 songs. I think between this...
It's 70 songs because there's 100 total.
Yeah. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount of Unrest.
It's their entire discography. I mean, it's like you get the Germs' complete discography on one CD. It's something like that.
So, I mean, if it's definitely... I would recommend both of them, and you can kind of have a whole day's worth of listening to Disrupt and get your politics straightened out. And
piss your parents off,
exactly.
or your roommates, or your wife, or
go
whatever.
Protest. Go burn down a.
I don't want to go to
animal
Ash
testing
Wednesday, Mom.
center. Yeah,
religion's a fraud.
yeah. Happy holidays, the Catholics out there.
They'll be past Lent by the time they listen to this.
Yeah, well. But anyways, we've got a trio of songs to sort of end things with, and let us know what you thought about the unrest that Disrupt has brought about.
Yeah.
Shoot us an email at requiempodcast@gmail.com, or check us out on the website
requiempodcast.com. Leave us a review on iTunes if you really enjoy the show and you'd like to give us a donation to help with our operating costs. We would much appreciate that. That's right on the main page. Check out our archives. We've got 80 some episodes.
Heck yeah.
For to dive into.
Yeah, Judge, this would probably be like right around episode 89 or 90, somewhere in that realm.
Yeah, pretty close.
So we're getting there, and we're nearing our top 10, our 10 greatest years of metal, which will be counted down to episode 100, which is coming up pretty soon. So if you have feedback on that, or you have a particular year you enjoy, shoot us something about that. We got mugs, t-shirts, all kinds of groovy stuff for sale. So
hell, if there's demand for it, we can make shoes.
Oh my gosh, kind of like those Slayer shoes.
Yeah, but let's say Requiem Podcast on the sides.
And also there's
but they're $50.
And I know Mark's.
But if you really want them, I'll make them for you.
Yeah, well, Mark's not one to plug himself too much, but there's a lot of links that you can get some artwork and things, including some links to the postcards. The
metal postcard sets?
The Decibel artwork that you've done for Decibel Magazine.
And there's also the original artwork that the illustrations are based on that is for sale, and that'll be up by the time you are listening to this if you're interested.
Yeah, and
if you don't want to buy them, you can still check it out, just the process of the whole thing.
Sure, yeah, pretty cool stuff. But we've got a trio of songs that we're going to kind of end things with. We got Squandered.
What a waste. What a fucking waste.
Yep,
Great
exactly.
chorus.
Whoa, something just got wasted there. Dealing with kind of environmentalism, oil spills, things like that. And we've got, Alyssa Murray returns for this tune. Mindlock, which is kind of dealing with sort of the trendy conformity. No more Mindlock. They kind of...
I just think of Deathlock anytime.
Yeah, there you go. And it's got a really, I guess what you could say the only solo on the record, but it's done in true sort of punk fashion where it's barely, it's almost like falling apart as it's being erected. And then we're going to end with Green to Gray, which is a wonderful statement on the environment and a wonderful way for Alyssa Murray to say good night, good luck, and goodbye.
And God bless.
Yeah, so for Disrupt, Unrest, I'm Jason.
And I'm Mark.